The courtroom fell silent when I walked through those heavy wooden doors, my bruised face still swollen from where my own son had struck me 3 days earlier. "What is she doing here?" "Mom, you have no business in this courtroom. This is between real family members who actually matter." I stood there, clutching my leather purse with trembling fingers, feeling every pair of eyes burning into my damaged face. The silence stretched like a knife blade. "Thank you for being here with me today. If this tale touches your heart, please stay until the very end. I need you to witness what happens next. Hit that like button if you believe justice finds a way, and tell me in the comments what country you're watching from. I want to know how many corners of this world understand a mother's pain. My name is Margaret Hartwell. I'm 68 years old, and I spent 43 years teaching children to read in the same small Vermont town, where I thought I'd die peacefully. 3 months ago, I was a respected widow with a beautiful home and a family I'd sacrificed everything for. Today, I'm standing in a courtroom, about to destroy the son I raised and the daughter-in-law who stole my life. But let me take you back to where this nightmare began, because what you're about to hear will chill you to the bone. 2 years ago, when Robert died from cancer, I thought the hardest part of my life was over. We'd paid off our house completely. A beautiful colonial worth $850,000 that we'd worked 40 years to own. Robert left me comfortable, with savings and his pension. I was lonely, yes, but financially secure. Danny, my 42-year-old son, started visiting more often after the funeral. At first, I was grateful. He'd bring Sheila, his wife of 15 years, and they'd stay for dinner, help with yard work, fix little things around the house. I thought grief had brought us closer together. "Mom, you shouldn't be handling all these finances alone," Danny said one evening, looking through my mail. "It's too much stress for someone your age." I should have seen the warning signs. The way Sheila's eyes lingered on my antique furniture. How Danny asked detailed questions about my bank accounts and retirement funds. The subtle comments about my memory. "Did you forget we talked about this yesterday?" Sheila would ask with fake concern when I hadn't forgotten anything at all. "Mom, you seem a little confused lately," Danny would add. "Maybe I should help you manage things." In my grief and loneliness, I believed they cared. When Danny suggested I give him power of attorney to help with paperwork, I signed without hesitation. He was my son. I trusted him completely. The changes started small. Danny would cancel appointments I'd made without asking me first. Sheila would answer my phone and tell callers I was resting or not feeling well. Old friends began avoiding me, and I couldn't understand why. "They're probably just busy," Sheila would say, with a sweet smile. "People move on, you know." But I noticed how they whispered when they thought I couldn't hear. How they'd exchange glances when I asked questions about my own finances. How Danny's gambling addiction, something he'd promised Robert he'd overcome, seemed to be getting worse based on the mysterious phone calls he'd take in hushed, angry tones. 3 months after giving Danny power of attorney, I was putting away dishes when I found papers tucked behind my recipe box. My hands shook as I read them. The documents were mortgage papers, on my house, for $400,000. And Danny's signature was right there next to mine. Except I had never signed anything. I confronted Danny the next morning, my voice trembling with confusion and betrayal. "What are these mortgage papers? I never signed these." Danny didn't even look surprised. He sat at my kitchen table, the same table where I'd served him breakfast every morning for 18 years, and looked at me like I was a child who'd forgotten her homework. "Mom, we talked about this. You signed them last month when you were having one of your confused spells. Remember, you needed the money for medical bills." "What medical bills? I'm perfectly healthy. I haven't been to a doctor except for my regular checkup." Sheila appeared in the doorway, her face a mask of fake sympathy. "Margaret, honey, you're doing it again. Just like when you forgot about Thanksgiving dinner last year." I stared at her. "I didn't forget Thanksgiving. You called and canceled 2 hours before dinner." "See," Danny shook his head sadly. "This is exactly what we're talking about. Mom, you're developing the same memory problems Aunt Linda had. It runs in families." My sister Linda had died of dementia 5 years earlier, and they knew how much that terrified me. The way they said it, so casually, so matter-of-factly, made my blood turn to ice. I'm calling the police, I said, reaching for my phone. Danny's hand shot out and grabbed my wrist, squeezing hard enough to leave bruises. For the first time, I saw real anger in his eyes. Not frustration or impatience, but cold, calculated rage. You're not calling anyone, Mom. You're confused, and you're going to hurt yourself if you keep acting like this. Sheila held up her phone. Recording. This is exactly the kind of episode we were telling you about, Margaret. See how agitated you get. This is why we're worried about you living alone. They'd planned this. The realization hit me like a physical blow. They'd been planning to gaslight me, to make me doubt my own mind, from the very beginning. After they left that night, I checked my bank statements online. My savings account, which had contained $180,000, now held $23,000. My retirement fund had been liquidated. The $400,000 mortgage they'd taken out against my house was already spent. But the worst discovery came when I called my bank. According to their records, I'd been in 3 times in the past month to make withdrawals and authorize transfers. The security cameras would show someone who looked like me, signing documents with a shaky hand. They'd been forging my signature for months. That night, I heard them whispering in the guest room about something called the final step and how they needed to make me disappear before Christmas. The next morning, I pretended to sleep late while Sheila made coffee in my kitchen like she owned it. I heard her on the phone, her voice bright and cheerful. Dr. Brennan. Yes. It's Sheila Hartwell. We need to move up the timeline. Yes. She's getting worse. More aggressive. More paranoid. I think we need to consider immediate placement. Placement. The word made my stomach drop. I crept closer to listen, my bare feet silent on the hardwood floors. Robert and I had refinished together 20 years ago. The commitment hearing is all set up. Sheila continued. You have all the documentation we discussed? Good. Danny's been filming her episodes, and we have plenty of evidence. What? Oh, don't worry about that. She won't fight it. By the time we're done, she'll be grateful someone's taking care of her. I backed away slowly, my heart pounding so hard, I thought it might give me away. Commitment hearing. They were planning to have me declared incompetent and locked away. Over the next few days, I discovered the full scope of their plan. Danny had been meeting with Sunset Manor, an expensive nursing home across town. They'd bribed Dr. Brennan, a psychiatrist who specialized in elderly patients, to provide false diagnoses of severe dementia. The most chilling part was finding the videos on Sheila's laptop when she left it unattended. Hours of footage showing me, at my most vulnerable moments, crying over Robert's death, confused about bills, tired and disoriented after taking new medication. They'd been secretly recording me for months, editing the clips to make me look completely incapacitated. But they hadn't just been preparing to steal my freedom. They'd been poisoning my relationships with everyone I loved. I called my sister Joyce in California, someone I spoke to every Sunday for 30 years. Oh, Margaret, she said, her voice full of pity. Danny told us about your condition, how you've been having those episodes. We're so worried about you. What episodes? Joyce, I'm fine. I'm calling to tell you, Danny's been… Honey, this is exactly what he said would happen. You'd call family members with paranoid stories. Maybe it's better if we talk after you get the help you need. They'd contacted everyone. My other children, my grandchildren, former colleagues, neighbors. Danny and Sheila had spent months laying the groundwork, telling everyone I was declining rapidly and becoming paranoid and aggressive. My own grandchildren, who used to visit every weekend, hadn't called in 2 months because their parents thought I was too unstable to be around kids. The commitment papers were already filled out, sitting in a folder marked Final Step in Sheila's craft supplies. She'd moved all her scrapbooking materials into my bedroom, the bedroom I'd shared with Robert for 35 years, because she'd already decided it was hers. The commitment hearing was scheduled for the day after tomorrow, and the most terrifying part. They'd already cleared out my bedroom and turned it into Sheila's craft room. I sat in my empty bedroom that night, surrounded by boxes of my belongings. They'd helpfully packed for my move to the nursing home, and realized I had less than 48 hours to save my life. In desperation, I called Robert's brother Pete at 3 in the morning. Pete lived 3 towns over and had been a police detective for 30 years before retiring. If anyone would believe me, it would be him. Margaret, what's wrong? It's 3 a.m. Pete, I need help. Danny and Sheila are trying to have me committed to steal my house. There was a pause. I'll be there in an hour. Don't talk to anyone until I arrive. Pete showed up with a small recording device and a grim expression. I've seen this before, Margaret. Elder abuse cases. Show me everything. For the first time in months, someone believed me. Pete examined the forged documents, the bank statements, the commitment papers. His detective instincts immediately recognized the systematic nature of their fraud. This isn't amateur hour, he said, photographing everything with his phone. They've done this before, or they had help from someone who has. Pete introduced me to Helen, his neighbor, who'd been a bank manager for 40 years. Helen took one look at my financial records, and her face went white. Margaret, they didn't just steal your money, they destroyed your credit, took out loans in your name, and used your house as collateral for at least 6 different debts. You're not just broke. You're hundreds of thousands in debt. But Helen and Pete had a plan. We're going to let them think they're winning, Pete explained. You're going to act confused and helpless while we gather evidence. Can you do that? I thought about my 43 years of teaching. If I could manage a classroom of 33rd graders, I could certainly fool 2 criminals who thought I was already senile. Pete installed tiny recording devices throughout my house and gave me a small camera that looked like a button on my cardigan. Helen helped me understand exactly how they'd manipulated my finances, and together we built a case that would destroy them. The hardest part was calling Sarah Mitchell, the attorney Pete recommended. Sarah specialized in elder abuse cases and had a reputation for being ruthless in court. Margaret, Sarah said, after reviewing Pete's evidence, this is one of the most systematic elder abuse cases I've ever seen. But here's what we're going to do. Sarah's plan was brilliant and terrifying. I would attend the commitment hearing as scheduled, let Danny and Sheila present their case, and then reveal the truth with overwhelming evidence. By the time we're done, Sarah said with a cold smile, they won't just lose your house, they'll lose their freedom. The next week was the performance of my lifetime. I shuffled around the house in my bathrobe, pretending to be confused about simple things while secretly documenting every crime they committed. Where am I? I asked Danny one morning, looking around my own kitchen with fake confusion. You're home, Mom, Danny said with exaggerated patience, while the hidden camera recorded him rolling his eyes at Sheila. Try to remember. They became incredibly careless, thinking I was too far gone to understand anything. I recorded them practicing their testimony for the hearing, coaching each other on which lies to tell. Remember to cry when you talk about how hard this is, Sheila told Danny. Judges love that emotional stuff. And you make sure to mention how she attacked you last week. Danny replied, show them the scratches. I'd never attacked anyone in my life, but Sheila had somehow acquired scratches on her arms that she planned to blame on me. The most devastating recording came when they thought I was napping. They sat in my living room, drinking my coffee and planning their future in my house. Once the old bat is locked up, we can finally live like normal people, Sheila laughed. No more pretending to care about her feelings. The first thing I'm doing is selling all this antique furniture, Danny added. It's worth at least 50 grand. Don't forget, we need to keep up the act for a few months, Sheila warned. Visit her occasionally, pretend we're sad about her condition. Then once she dies in that place, we inherit everything clean. They were literally planning my death while sitting in the living room where I'd raised Danny, where Robert and I had celebrated every Christmas and birthday, where we'd built 43 years of memories. I also discovered they'd been intercepting my mail for months. Sympathy cards from friends, medical appointment reminders, even birthday cards from my grandchildren. Everything went straight to them. They'd been canceling my doctor appointments and telling people I was too unwell to receive calls or visitors. But the most chilling discovery was finding Dr. Brennan's notes in Sheila's purse. He'd already written detailed psychiatric evaluations, describing symptoms I'd never exhibited, conversations we'd never had, and a diagnosis of severe dementia that would justify immediate commitment. The night before the commitment hearing, I heard Sheila on the phone with someone, saying, "Don't worry, after tomorrow the old hag will be locked up and the house will be ours. She'll probably die in that place, within a year anyway." That's when I knew they weren't just stealing my money and freedom. They were planning my murder, slow and legal and completely undetectable. The morning of the hearing arrived gray and cold. I put on my best confused, frail act as Danny and Sheila helped me into the car, speaking to me like I was a child. "Now, Mom, we're going to see a nice judge who wants to help you," Danny said in that patronizing tone I'd grown to hate. "Just answer his questions honestly, okay?" In the courthouse, I shuffled slowly, clutching my purse, letting them guide me to our seats. Judge Harrison looked kind but tired, probably dealing with dozens of similar cases every month. Danny and Sheila's attorney, a slick young man named Bradley, presented their case with practiced compassion. He showed the edited videos of me appearing confused and agitated, read from Dr. Brennan's fake medical reports, and painted a picture of a loving family trying to help their declining matriarch. "Your Honor," Bradley said, with perfect fake sincerity, "Mrs. Hartwell's condition has deteriorated rapidly over the past year. She's become paranoid, aggressive, and unable to care for herself safely." Dr. Brennan took the stand and lied smoothly about extensive consultations we'd never had. He described my supposed symptoms with clinical precision, making me sound like a danger to myself and others. "Mrs. Hartwell suffers from advanced dementia with aggressive episodes," he testified. "She requires immediate professional care for her own safety." Sheila cried perfect crocodile tears as she described how difficult it was to watch me disappear into confusion. Danny played the devoted son who couldn't bear to see his mother suffer like this. For an hour, I sat silently in my chair, letting them hang themselves with lies, while the court reporter documented every word. Judge Harrison asked me simple questions. My name, the date, where I lived, and I gave confused, rambling answers that made me sound completely incapacitated. "Mrs. Hartwell," Judge Harrison said gently, "do you understand why you're here today?" "I think. Are we at the grocery store?" I replied, looking around with manufactured confusion. It was working. I could see Judge Harrison's expression, growing more convinced that I needed immediate care. Danny squeezed Sheila's hand triumphantly. Just as Judge Harrison reached for his gavel to approve the commitment, I stood up slowly and said 5 words that made Danny's face turn white. "Your Honor, I have evidence." The change in the courtroom was electric. My voice was clear, strong, and completely lucid. Judge Harrison's eyebrows shot up as I shed my confused act like an old coat. "Mrs. Hartwell," Judge Harrison said, clearly startled. "Your Honor, my name is Margaret Elizabeth Hartwell. I am 68 years old, and I have been a certified teacher in this state for 43 years. I have never been diagnosed with dementia, and I have never met Dr. Brennan before today." Sarah Mitchell stood up from the back of the courtroom, where she'd been watching the entire proceeding. "Your Honor, I represent Mrs. Hartwell. We have extensive evidence of elder abuse, financial fraud, and perjury." The color drained from Danny's face as Sarah approached the bench with 3 boxes of documentation. Sheila grabbed Danny's arm, whispering frantically, but it was too late. "Your Honor," Sarah continued, "over the past 10 days, Mrs. Hartwell has been working with local law enforcement to document a systematic scheme to defraud her of her home, her life savings, and her freedom." Judge Harrison called for a recess, but I wasn't done. I pulled out the small recording device Pete had given me and placed it on the table. "Your Honor, would you like to hear my son and daughter-in-law planning my death?" I played the recording of Sheila, saying I'd probably die in that place within a year anyway. The courtroom was so quiet you could hear breathing. Sarah presented bank records, showing the systematic theft of my life savings, expert testimony, proving the signatures on the mortgage documents were forged, and medical records from my actual physician, confirming my perfect cognitive function. Dr. Brennan's lies crumbled when my real doctor, Dr. Patricia Wells, testified via video call. "I've been Mrs. Hartwell's physician for 15 years. She has never shown any signs of cognitive decline. In fact, her mental acuity is remarkable for someone her age." But the most devastating moment came when Sarah played the full, unedited recordings of Danny and Sheila planning their fraud. The courtroom heard them laughing about the old bat, planning to steal my furniture, and coaching each other on lies to tell the judge. Judge Harrison's expression grew darker with each piece of evidence. Danny and Sheila sat in stunned silence, their lawyer frantically taking notes, realizing their clients had just been exposed as criminals in open court. "This isn't just elder abuse," Sarah concluded. "This is attempted kidnapping, financial fraud, and conspiracy to commit false imprisonment." But the most devastating evidence was still coming, because what they did next would destroy not just their freedom but their future. As Sarah finished presenting our evidence, the courtroom doors opened and sheriff's deputies entered. Judge Harrison had called for immediate arrests based on the evidence presented. Daniel Robert Hartwell and Sheila Marie Hartwell, the lead deputy, announced, "You're under arrest for elder abuse, financial fraud, forgery, conspiracy, and attempted false imprisonment." Dr. Brennan was also arrested as his medical license was immediately suspended pending investigation. It turned out this wasn't his first time providing fake diagnoses for elder abuse cases. But the story got worse. Sarah revealed that we'd been working with the FBI Financial Crimes Unit for weeks, because my case had uncovered a larger elder abuse ring operating through Sunset Manor. "Your Honor," Sarah explained, "the Hartwells were part of a systematic scheme targeting elderly homeowners throughout this region. They used the same forged medical documents, the same corrupt doctor, and the same nursing home to steal from at least 12 other families." The full scope of Danny's desperation became clear when the FBI agent testified about his gambling debts. Danny owed over $200,000 to bookmakers and loan sharks, with threats escalating weekly. The rushed timeline of their scheme made sense now. They needed my money immediately to save Danny's life. Sheila's background was even more shocking. She had a history of financial fraud against elderly relatives in 3 other states. My son had married a professional con artist who specialized in targeting vulnerable family members. As I listened to the details of their crimes, I felt something break inside me. This wasn't just theft. It was the complete destruction of everything I'd believed about family, love, and trust. "Mrs. Hartwell," Judge Harrison said gently, "would you like to address the court?" I stood slowly, looking at my son for what I knew would be the last time. "Your Honor, I raised Danny to be honest, hardworking, and kind. I taught him that family means protecting each other, not preying on each other. The man sitting at that table isn't the son I raised. I don't know what happened to that little boy who used to bring me dandelions and promised to take care of me when I got old." Danny's face was stone, showing no remorse, no recognition of the pain he'd caused. Judge Harrison ordered immediate restitution of all stolen funds and set bail at $500,000 each, money Danny and Sheila didn't have. As the handcuffs clicked around Danny's wrists, he looked at me with pure hatred and whispered something that made my blood run cold. "You're a vindictive old witch, and I hope you die alone in that house you care more about than your own family." Even in handcuffs, even facing years in prison, Danny blamed me for his crimes. Sheila was screaming about me, ruining their lives and destroying their children's future, showing zero accountability for their actions. "I didn't raise you to steal from your own mother," I said quietly. "I didn't raise you to lie, cheat, or hurt people who trusted you. Whatever you've become, it's not because of how I loved you." The courtroom watched in silence as 2 criminals were led away, still blaming everyone but themselves for their choices. Danny never once said he was sorry. Neither did Sheila. As I reclaimed the power of attorney, my bank accounts, and my home, I felt an overwhelming sadness. Not just for the money they'd stolen, or the freedom they'd tried to take, but for the loss of the son I'd thought I had. The worst part wasn't the theft. It was the realization that my own child had been willing to rob me of my final years of dignity and freedom. He'd been prepared to watch me die alone in a nursing home, forgotten and afraid, just so he could inherit a house. I'd lost a son that day, but I'd saved my life. But their troubles weren't over yet, because what happened at their sentencing hearing would shock even me. 3 months later, I sat in the same courtroom for Danny and Sheila's sentencing hearing. What I learned about their crimes during those months made me realize how lucky I'd been to escape their trap. The FBI investigation revealed that Danny and Sheila had targeted elderly homeowners throughout New England, using the same forged medical documents and corrupt doctor for each case. Their scheme had affected 12 families total, stealing over $3 million in property and life savings. An 82-year-old man named Harold Peterson had died in Sunset Manor just 6 months after his family had him committed, using the same fake diagnosis. His children had inherited his $600,000 home while he died alone, believing his own mind had betrayed him. Sarah Patterson, a 74-year-old widow, had spent 8 months in Sunset Manor before her grandchildren discovered the fraud. By then, her house had been sold and her life savings were gone. She'd developed real depression and anxiety from the trauma. Judge Harrison read each victim's story before announcing the sentences. Danny received 8–12 years in prison for elder abuse and fraud. Sheila got 6–10 years, and Dr. Brennan faced federal charges that would likely end with a 15-year sentence. Sunset Manor was shut down for accepting bribes and participating in the fraud ring. The corrupt nurses and administrators who'd helped fake medical records were also arrested. When it was my turn to give a victim impact statement, I looked directly at Danny as I spoke. Your Honor, what my son and daughter-in-law stole from me wasn't just money. They took my trust, my sense of safety, and my relationship with family members who believed their lies about my mental health. They were prepared to watch me die alone and afraid, thinking my own mind had abandoned me. I described the months of therapy I'd needed to process the betrayal, the sleepless nights wondering if I could trust my own judgment, the painful work of rebuilding relationships with family members who'd believed I was losing my mind. The financial damage can be repaired, I continued. But the emotional damage of knowing your own child sees you as nothing more than a paycheck, that kind of wound never fully heals. Danny still showed no remorse. Even facing prison, he stared at me with cold resentment, as if I'd somehow wronged him by refusing to be his victim. As I walked out of that courthouse for the final time, I realized my real journey was just beginning. It's been a year since the trial ended, and I've slowly rebuilt my life from the wreckage Danny and Sheila created. The house they tried to steal is now secure in a trust that will benefit elder abuse prevention programs, ensuring no one can ever use it to hurt vulnerable people again. I volunteer with the Elder Justice Coalition now, helping other victims find their voice and fight back against financial predators. Every month, I speak to support groups filled with people who've been betrayed by their own families. The stories are heartbreakingly similar. Children who see inheritance as an early retirement plan, in-laws who view elderly relatives as obstacles to wealth, and family members who convince themselves that theft is somehow kindness. But I've also seen incredible strength. I've watched 80-year-old women learn to use recording devices to catch their abusers. I've seen grandmothers hire attorneys and fight back against children who thought they were too weak to resist. My bank accounts have been restored, my credit repaired, and my home is truly mine again. But more importantly, I've discovered a community of survivors who understand that surviving family betrayal requires a special kind of courage. I've reconnected with friends who'd been driven away by Danny and Sheila's lies. My sister Joyce flew out from California to apologize for doubting me, and we're closer now than we've been in years. My grandchildren, who'd been told I was too sick to see them, visit every weekend now. They help me, in the garden where I've planted a memorial rosebush for Robert, and they listen to stories about their grandfather they'd never heard before. Danny writes letters from prison occasionally, still blaming me for his choices. His letters are full of self-pity and anger, claiming I destroyed his family by refusing to be robbed. I don't respond. There's nothing left to say to someone who still believes stealing from his mother was justified. Some people ask if I feel guilty about sending my own son to prison. The answer is no. I feel sad for the child he used to be, and I grieve for the relationship we'll never have. But I don't regret protecting myself and other potential victims from his crimes. The house is peaceful now. I sit in my garden every morning with coffee, watching the sunrise over the home Robert and I built together. The silence isn't lonely anymore, it's safe. I've learned that strength isn't about never falling down. It's about getting back up, fighting for what's right, and refusing to let others define your worth based on your age or vulnerability. At 68, I discovered I'm tougher than I ever imagined. And if my story can help even one person recognize the signs of elder abuse and fight back, then surviving this nightmare will have served a purpose. Thank you for walking this difficult journey with me. If my story has touched your heart, please share it, because somewhere out there, another mother, another grandmother, might be facing the same betrayal I did. They need to know they're not alone, and they need to know they can fight back. Give this video a like if you believe in justice, subscribe if you want to hear more stories like mine, and tell me in the comments, have you ever had to fight for what was rightfully yours? I read every comment, and your support gives me strength every single day. Remember, we are never too old to stand up for ourselves, and we are never too vulnerable to demand justice. Until next time, keep fighting the good fight.